Okay, it's Sunday, so it's time to play some fighting games and answer some questions. I know, we missed the whole week again. I'm sorry. I apologize. I have a poor work ethic, what can I say? First up, have you ever considered making videos for fighting games like Strive, either using your Overwatch format to review gameplay or talking about the characters? It's interesting to hear you talk about them here and there at the end of QAs. I have, so what I've been thinking of doing is, basically what I'm thinking of doing is picking the character that I don't play, and then learning how to play that character, and kind of going through that process. So, like, we're gonna do some fucking Faust, and then go in training, kind of figure out what the character's good at, and then, like, play some games, basically. And then go back and review them if I thought the game was interesting for one reason or another. There's benefit in, like, talking about it a little bit more granularly. Something like that. Or, yeah, just, like, gameplay, you know, reviewing gameplay, or just gameplay in general. I've been thinking about doing something like it. Because Strive's a really fucking good game, you know? It's really good, highly recommend it, I like it a lot. In general, like, since I did start playing fighting games, I've gotten really into them in general, but Strive is really fucking good. I don't know that I prefer it more than Fighters. The problem there is that Fighters is the fighting game that I started playing, so that's always going to have a little bit of bias attached to it, isn't it? It's just how it is. When they do inevitably make a Fighters 2, that will be very exciting, and then I get to be one of the old fighting game players that bemoans the existence of the new fighting game, because it's not the way it used to be, which is currently doing the rounds with Strive. Many people are upset that it's not like, it's very different to all the previous Guilty Gear games, which essentially means it's less fucking stupid, if I'm being honest with you. They'll tell you the game is not as deep. I think that's just fucking nonsense. I've heard all kinds of nonsense things get thrown at Strive. One of the most ludicrous things I've heard people say is that the game is slow, especially compared to other Guilty Gears. This game is not fucking slow. That's absurd, but that's doing the rounds. Anyway. Strive's really fucking good, though. Real good. So yes, I have been thinking about it, and I'll probably do something. The plan is to do something alternating with the Overwatch stuff, though. Next. Opinions on using psychological warfare. I'll die on this hill. Teabagging's a legitimate strategy. There's a really good, Core Gaming video about this. That's about fighting games. I'll link to it. But it's really interesting in general, even if you don't have any interest in fighting games. Like, it goes into, like, the psychology of, like, games and teabagging, basically. Which is very interesting. I'd highly recommend it. I'll link it in the description. Teabagging's a legitimate strategy, okay? It's just how it is. I don't think there's anything wrong with, like, fucking with the other team. As long as you're not being outright toxic about it, right? Which, there's a fine line that people will draw at different points. As long as you're not, like, going into chat and being like, alright, and then you start throwing some gamer words at them, right? That's not psychological warfare. That's being a cunt. But like, as long as you're not doing stuff like that, like, fucking go for it. If you play a team game, like Overwatch, League of Legends, Dota, whatever the fuck, what you'll frequently see is people complaining in all chat about their teammates. Here's what you do. The second you see that happening in the chat, you pick a side. It doesn't matter which side you pick. You just pick one of those sides. Because then, the side you didn't agree with just got about 100% more mad than they were previously. And also, they'll probably start typing a lot more. Which, in turn, leads you into the downward spiral that you inevitably go into, right? But, like, in general, teabagging, taunting in general, all that shit, as far as I'm concerned, that's up for grabs. It's a legitimate strategy. And I do employ this in basically every game I play. I don't really teabag in, like, fighting games, mostly because, to be frank, I'm not good at these video games. I don't think I've earned the right to use that strategy. But if I was like Sonic Fox, I'm teabagging him, alright? It's what I'm doing. Sonic Fox does it. If I'm Sonic Fox, I'm fucking doing it too. And he doesn't really teabag, but he's, like, visibly fucking with people when he plays sometimes. What was my next point? I do this in video games. I'll take the side. If I'm playing Overwatch, I'll teabag somebody, especially if I really fucking got them. If I'm playing League of Legends, I spam emotes at them a lot. I'm a big fan of that one, especially if they just really fucked up what they just did. Right? They're getting the emote thrown right at them, just so they know I saw what they did, and I'm gonna mock them about it. If they're playing a champion like Blitzcrank, who's like based firmly around one ability, which is hooking the opponent, that's like, Blitzcrank's basically just Roadhog when we get right down to it. If they miss that hook, they're gonna get an emote every single time they miss a hook, and then they start hooking less. They start psyching themselves out about it. It's great. I'm a firm believer in this. Teabagging's a strategy, and I encourage it. And if you're playing a team game, fucking pick a side. As soon as this fight starts, pick a fucking side. But don't use the gamer words, okay? Don't do it. Next, what are win conditions? This is one of those questions where it's really tempting to say it's what you do to win the game. But that's not really a very good answer. So, we'll go a little bit more into that. So, basically, with a fighting game, or like a single-player game, or like single-player multiplayer game, right? Like a card game or something, fighting game, card game, the goal, like, your deck, your character, whatever, has one specific thing that they're really good at, and you're trying to get to that position as quickly as you can, basically. Fighting games, that's what's on screen right now. Ramlethal is really bad mid-screen. She's okay mid-screen, but, like, it's not what she's trying to do. What Ramlethal's really good at is corner pressure because of the exploding swords. So we're trying to get him right here. The position that Anji's in right now, that's what we're trying to get him in. Where we just mix them up in the corner, and it's very hard for them to get out because you keep chucking swords at them, pretty much. If you're playing a deck, your deck does one of, like, three things. It tries to win early game, it tries to win mid game, it tries to win late game. So you're just trying to get there, right? Like, you're trying to get to that position. If you're trying to win early game, you're just trying to kill that guy as quickly as you fucking can. You're playing cards that attack immediately, buff other cards, big synergy between each other. You gotta curve out real quickly. You don't want heavy cards in there, because you're trying to win early. You don't want any high-cost minions. But if you're playing a late game deck, then you put a lot of stalling cards in there so you can survive the early game. You put a couple, if like the rush decks are popular, you try and put a couple cards in there that help stall them out, but you're trying to get to your big late game piece as quickly as you can, right? The thing that wins you the game, which is usually one very powerful card, but is like really heavy investment to play. If you're playing a team game, like Overwatch or League of Legends, your win condition starts to become more abstract than if you're playing a single-player multiplayer game, which is an absurd statement, but you know what I mean. Because the win condition is not just strictly you anymore, right? It's your team as a whole. A team can have multiple win conditions, and sometimes you can have a win condition that revolves around the enemy team more than your team. Which is getting even more abstract. But to begin, so you play an Overwatch, your team comp's got, like, Ana Genji on it, right? Ana Genji, there's a win condition in there, which is Nanoblade, right? You're trying to get that one to work, because Nanoblade will win you a game. Well, it'll win you a fight, and then you win enough fights, you win the game, right? Same thing. So you're trying to get to that as quickly as you can. And then when both the pieces are together, you both have your ultimates. You then try and get into a position to leverage it as much as you can. Ideally, Genji makes it easy to get nano boosted, and Anna's in a position, trying to position so it's easier for her to see the Genji when he goes in. Maybe you have another setup piece in there just to try and make it a little bit easier, like some other kind of ultimate, like self-destruct, to kind of like funnel them into an area, and then but like that's really just trying to make the nano blade even better. But the win condition can also be like, it's not always as clear as ultimates. Instead, it can be something like, they have a really weak tank line, but we have a very strong tank line, right? Like, they are running Zarya D.Va, which is like the worst tank combo you can run, basically. But we've got Rein Zarya. That means we can just push up and take space from them because their tank line can't physically hold us back firmly enough. So we can literally just walk up to them, take a bunch of space from them, and restrict their options, and just kind of like choke them out, basically, because they don't have the presence necessary to hold us back. The win condition could also be like, I'm playing Mercy, and I've made the call that that Hanzo player is really fucking good on my team, actually. Do you like how it decides that my shirt mostly, but also my arm is just part of the backgrounds? Like, it knows that's my arm, but it doesn't know the intervening part is also me. Anyway, like, I've decided this Hanzo player is really fucking good. I've decided this Ashe player is really good. This Widow player is really good. So now I literally revolve around them, right? Like, I'm putting as many resources into this person as I can. I'm damage boosting them constantly. I don't have to be healing somebody at this particular moment. I'm damage boosting them. Even if, like, that guy's, like, taking, like, some damage, fuck him. He'll live. I'm damage boosting Hanzo right now. Hanzo's the one that's gonna win me this game. Right? Your win condition can be more like that. But sometimes the win condition could also be, that guy's really bad. Do you know what we should do? We should just, like, crush him. We should just crush his soul, basically. Because there's, you know, the chain's only as strong as its weakest link, right? So, if this guy is really bad, doesn't matter who it is, their soldier's always out of position, their Reinhardt's always out of position, whatever, whoever the fuck, they're bad, whatever, I'm gonna bully them now. Because you know what's really hard to do in any video game? It's win a game, or in a team game, rather. It's really hard to win a fight where the enemy team outnumbers you. So if someone on the enemy team is really bad, and you just really hone in on that bad player, you basically make every fight a 5v6 immediately, as soon as the fight starts. So the win condition can also be something like that. And then, but characters do have their own individual win conditions as well. Though, win condition is not perhaps the best way to put it on like a character-to-character basis, because a game like Overwatch is very hard to like win a game by yourself. Individual characters having a win condition is more something you see in a game like League or Dota. Because it's easier to hard carry those kinds of games by yourself, so your win condition is a little bit more firm. For a game like Overwatch, your win condition is basically just an advantageous condition for you more than anything else. More on Overwatch specifically with this later. But, so someone like, what's a good idea? Like, Soldier's a really straightforward one, right? Where your win condition is you get control of the high ground, and then you play around that high ground. You have a really long line of sight, you have a large zone of threat, the High ground accentuates this. It makes you much more threatening. It also makes you much safer. It makes your ultimate better as well. High ground's very good for you. High ground is your win condition. Or long sight lines, depending on the map. Somewhere like King's Row doesn't really have high ground you can take advantage of, but it does have long sight lines, which also benefits someone like Soldier. But also like choke, if the map has a lot of choke points, that benefits somebody like Junkrat, because Junkrat's win condition is basically to constrict choke points as much as he possibly can. He's a suppression type hero, and the easiest thing to suppress is a choke point, because you're funneling through this narrow area at somebody. So if you're just spamming into that area, you're not having a good time. Or well, you are. The other team's not having a good time. So you're trying to get into that kind of position. Games like League of Legends, more firm win conditions because your characters are individually just much stronger, especially with the exponential growth you gain from like purchasing items, which all MOBAs do basically. So your win condition is basically, do I win early game or do I win late game? And then you try to get to it as quickly as you can. Yeah, so you're either like, you're trying to bully the other person in lane as much as you possibly can because you are a very strong early game champion, but you probably scale worse. So you're trying to win before you start becoming bad, basically. But if you're a late game champion, you tend to be weak early. So you're just trying to survive that stage as much as you possibly can, to get to the point where you're really strong, which is when you have multiple items, and you're like max level and shit. This is why AD carries in League of Legends are the only role in the game that have a babysitter as their companion. The supports babysit the AD carries. Supports are very strong for like the first 15 minutes of the game, but they fall off extremely hard. AD carries, conversely, very weak early game, but then scale very hard and going into the late game. So that's why you get the two playing together like that. They complement each other extremely well. And you need something that's going to win you late game, because if it gets to like 40 minutes and you got nothing, well, you lost. Sorry. So there's a broad overview of win conditions in multiple games for you, just trying to be very thorough as much as we possibly can. But it's basically like, what's like strong about the character I'm playing or our current team composition, and how do I leverage that fact as much as I possibly can. When you figure out what that fact is and how you leverage it, you just try to get to that position as quickly as you possibly can. And you just try to do it repetitively over and over and over again. There you go. Next up, why am I throwing? Now, this question didn't have a tremendous amount of context attached to it, but I choose to interpret this as then just like, why am I losing a lot of games? Which is, I think, like, when you throw a lot of games, tilt comes into it, obviously, but this guy kind of gave the impression that he's just like, it's not so much losing streaks, it's just that they lose quite consistently, even over extended periods of time. Though I'm interpreting a lot from fairly minimal context given. I think most of it is just that, like, a lot of it is just choking with most people. Because choking's very easy to do. You're in the moment, it's all coming together, and then it just all falls apart immediately. Tends to be how, like, that kind of thing goes, as far as I'm concerned anyway. And, like, choking, this is not really so, like, this is something that's, like, such a personal issue that it tends to be a very difficult problem to fix if you do choke a lot in games. Because what that probably just basically means is you're anxious and you're getting too much in your own head. And you want to try and avoid this as much as you possibly can. It's a tilt-adjacent situation, you know? And you basically just gotta try and not think so much about it, which is obviously, like, way easier said than done, right? This is something that just takes an extended period of time where you try and, like, talk yourself out of, like, feeling anxious about shit, right? Like, so, fighting games. This is all I revolve around now. I just find fighting games are really easy to make these concrete examples out of, because there's overall fairly low variance in fighting games, right? Like, you can describe things fairly plainly, whereas with like a team game like Overwatch, you usually have to attach like a bunch of asterisks to things to really like make a broad point about something. Especially since people are pedants. Anyway, so like fighting games, the main problem I used to have was that I was just mad anxious for no reason about like everything. It was a very stressful environment for me. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what the fuck they were doing. I'm just fucking trying to not die right now, basically, and I'm doing a bad job of it. And like, basically, I just had to get really used to losing. This was step one in overcoming this like stress throwing, essentially, this anxiousness of it attached to playing the game, essentially. I had to get really used to losing. This was something I knew coming in. I was going to lose a lot of fucking games until I started winning. It was just how it was going to have to be. So I had to get used to that. And the way I did that was, if someone beat me, I just kept playing them over and over and over again. I played a game against a guy that it went like 29 and 1. Like, you know, it's like really fucking depressing. But like, that's how you learn, right? You lose a lot, and then eventually you learn. But you get used to it. This is the important part, really, is that like, when you're afraid of losing, the way you play the game, you're not trying to win. You're trying to not lose. And that's not good. That's how you end up throwing a lot of games. You're not playing to win. You're playing to not lose. I'm sure you've also experienced something similar to that. Like, if somebody's ever watching you play a video game, like a competitive video game, where suddenly you're really afraid you're gonna fuck up in front of the person that's watching you, right? I'm sure you've had this experience. And then suddenly your play just changes as a result of that, because you're more afraid of making a mistake than anything else. So you're just trying to not lose. See, that's the thing again, it comes into that. Don't be that way. Don't play to not lose, play to win. But like, you gotta not be afraid to lose, and you gotta get real used to that one real quick. So like, you gotta overcome that. But like, I'm struggling to think of how to put this in a way that makes sense, without saying something really banal, like, it's just a video game, dude, don't worry about it. It's more like, losing's an inevitable part of, like, video games. Try not to worry so much about that. Don't worry about, like, what the potential result of this situation is going to be, and worry more about just what you're doing, right? Just, like, play in the moment. Don't let all this other shit distract you. Like, oh god, things are going badly, I'm gonna lose however much SR, oh Jesus Christ, I'm gonna, like, lose my rank, blah blah blah. Don't worry about all that, you're still playing the fucking video game right now. Worry about, like, that when you see the losing screen, right? Like, then you can worry about that. Right now, just play the fucking game. Don't be thinking about all this shit that surrounds the game. There's actually a thing for this, it's called the flow state, which is, there's a whole psychological thing about this. There's, like, a paper and shit about it. Like, smart people have talked about this. But, like, it really is basically just, like, you're only thinking about what you're doing at this particular moment. You've shut everything else out around you, and you're just, it's what you're doing right now. I've gotten very good at this, because I've gotten used to losing. That's stage one for me. Now I'm not afraid anymore. I no longer experience fear playing the video game. Fighting games in particular, I very firmly believe this. When you get to the point where you think to yourself, I can only get hit one more time, you've already lost. The second you think that, I can only get hit one more time, you've already lost. You can't ever think that. This was also something I learned rock climbing. Don't look down. Don't look down. Don't do that. You're not, it's not gonna be a fun experience. The second you look down, you realize how easy it is to die doing what you're doing right now. Don't do that. Don't think about it. Don't think. I could only get hit one more time. Don't think about that. Don't even think about your fucking health, dog. The only hit point that matters is the last one. You can worry about how low your health is when you're dead. Right now, you're alive, and you gotta make the other guy not alive. This is a very deep point. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. So, that's enough about that. We're moving on now. Opinion on Elo Hell in Overwatch compared to other games. I do think that Overwatch has more Elo Hell probably than any other team game in existence, actually. Because it's a game where it's very hard to solo carry, but it's very easy to solo throw. So that's a lovely intersection of two bad things, right? Overwatch, for better or worse, depends on who you ask, is really team-focused as a game. Like, if somebody on your team is doing really badly, it's very difficult to compensate for that. Like, a very bad Reinhardt on your team is, like, an active detriment to you. And your play suddenly becomes mitigating this as much as you possibly can, right? Like, it's very hard. Brief aside, right? If you play Ramlethal and you use one of the white skins, like that one, I'm sorry, but you're a fucking cop. Like, what are you doing? Don't stop that. Dark skin's the best tag. Why are you taking it off of her? Also, like, this one, look, it's a little Nazi adjacent as far as a color scheme goes, isn't it? You know, don't do that. Don't be a fucking cop, alright? You use any of the white Ramlethal skins, I don't trust you. I'm sorry. I don't know if we can be friends. Anyway. So Overwatch, like, it's just a really team-focused game. It's hard to compensate for people playing really badly. And, like, one mistake can have, like, catastrophic ramifications. That's not really a problem exclusive to Overwatch. It's just a compounding thing where these multiple elements come together to make it hard to, like, solo carry a game. Because, like, a catastrophic mistake in all games is bad, right? Like, I made one mistake a second ago and lost 60% of my health. That's pretty catastrophic, right? It's just it's a compounding thing, where Overwatch is like, it's very hard to solo carry, it's very easy to solo throw. One mistake has huge ramifications, especially for the 2 CP maps, where you only really have to lose 2 fights and you lose the entire game. You know, like, it's a compounding thing. Now, that being said, anybody that actually says Elo Hell exists is really just looking for an excuse, which is, like, don't do that. Like, just don't do this. Don't, like, worry about, like, what other people are doing. Worry about it yourself. Like, you can't do what other people do. There's no point worrying about that. You can't control what they do. Just worry about the things you can control, which is how you play. And, like, even if a game's completely out of your hands, like the Reinhardt was just throwing constantly, like, don't then go, fucking Reinhardt, right? Because that's just, you've suddenly shut off, like, you're not learning anything anymore. You've suddenly just decided, fuck it, what could I have done? I couldn't do anything, right? It was all Reinhardt's fault. Fuck that. Don't do that. Even if it's, like, totally 100% not your fault you lost that game, you should still then go, well, what could I have done? Because even in the most lost of games, there's usually something you could have done to improve your chances of winning, even if it was only, like, a 1% chance. Still do that, even if it's totally not your fault. You know, take what you can from it and move on, because that's all ultimately you can do. Don't worry about what other people are doing. As long as you play consistently well, you will climb. It doesn't matter the game. As long as you are playing consistently well, you will climb. It's just how it is. Statistically speaking, this is how it goes, right? It's just how math works, where you'll win eventually. So just take what you can from these situations and then don't worry about it. I do think that something people have a problem with Overwatch specifically, but this can also be applied to like other team games, is advice you hear comes from high elo players, right? And high elo players, they don't do anything with low elos, right? So they tend to be in this like bubble where like they give this advice that works for them, oblivious to the fact that advice that works for somebody in Diamond Plus will not ever work for somebody that's below Gold. It just won't. And even then, like, until you get to like Diamond, like, it still probably won't work a lot of the time. You have to adjust how you play to the SR that you're playing in. This becomes really apparent whenever you see like these occasional posts pop up that's like, I'm Masters, GM, Gold. I saw a top 500 one recently, and then they can't get out of Gold on like another role, or like they play on a Smurf and they can't get that above a certain rank. That's because they only know how to play in a high elo environment where they can rely on people acting in a certain consistent way. People don't do that below certain ranks, right? Like, they don't do that. You can't rely on people to act in a way, either on your team or the enemy team. You have to adjust how you play for the environment you're playing in. And people are bad at doing that. They see this advice that's coming from these high elo players, oblivious to the fact that it won't work for this dude because he's in fucking bronze. Like, A, he's not good enough to do what they're saying, and then B, his team and the enemy team are not going to be doing the things that make this advice valid. You have to, like, adjust to these things, and people are really bad at doing that. In Overwatch in particular, I find this to be the case. But team-based games and, like, SR team games like this, you know, it happens. You see it in, like, League of Legends, Dota as well, where people can't scale their expectations like this. But, you know, that's a whole other problem on top of itself. But yeah, Overwatch is worse for elo hell than other games because it's really team-centric, but at the same time, stop fucking worrying about this shit, right? Like, elo hell's not real, just worry about what you're doing, and you'll climb. So, next up, and then this is the last question for this week, is learning habits, question mark. There were two ways that I could have interpreted this, which is how do you learn certain habits, or habits for learning productively. I have chosen to interpret it as learning productively. And that, like, depends on who you are as a person, because certain people respond to different kinds of learning differently. For me, personally, I think it's called a kinesthetic learner, which I learn by doing something, right? I used to be really visually based in this. Like, I used to learn a lot more from, like, videos. Like, I used to watch a lot of guides for stuff, and that was really helpful for me. I don't really find that to be the case anymore. I find it much easier to learn now by just, like, getting my hands on something and then playing around with it. Low-key, what helped me with this was, like, doing, like, YouTube stuff, right? Because when you're trying to teach people how to do something, you have to think about things in a different way. Like, I actually think a decent way to learn how to do something is to teach somebody else how to do it. Because suddenly you have to really think about, like, why you're doing certain things. You have to think about things differently, and I find that to be very helpful. So I think this has helped where now I'm, like, better at, like, getting my hands on something and then, like, thinking about it in a productive way. But not everybody's that way. Some people learn better visually. Like, some people will just learn faster, like, watching a guide, because they're not so good at necessarily intuiting something themselves like that. And that's fine. You know, different people are different, work differently like that. It depends on who you are. Like, general broad advice is, like, try and think about the things that you did wrong more than anything else, because, like, you learn a lot more from losing and failing than you do from actually winning. But the important thing is that, like, you have to actually think about that in a productive way, because what I find happens is you tell people to learn from your mistakes, like, accept you're bad, learn from your mistakes and all this. But, like, some people get really in their head about this, and suddenly they don't actually think about their failure productively. Instead, they then go just like, oh god, why did I do that? I'm so stupid. That's step one. You've acknowledged the mistake, right? Which is part of this advice. You have to acknowledge your own mistakes, which is, fuck, why did I do that? I'm stupid. But then people just stop at that step. They then don't then go the necessary follow-up step to that. Acknowledging the mistake, step one. Step two, learning from that mistake. Just going, fuck, why did I do that? I'm so stupid. Is not actually learning. That actually just becomes an excuse to beat yourself up, which is exactly as unproductive as not acknowledging the mistake in the first place. What you have to do is go, fuck, I'm stupid. God damn it. Well, what should I have done? Right? Like, that's the necessary second step in that process. You can't just go, I shouldn't have done that. Well, what should you have done? Right? That's what you have to do. And sometimes what you should have done is really simple. Sometimes what you should have done is click on them better, right? Like, sometimes the mistake is just you pushed the buttons in the wrong order, which is thankfully very easy to actually troubleshoot, right? Like, I found that problem pretty easily. The problem is, if the problem is more abstract, it becomes harder to figure out what you should have done. Because it's not always, I dropped that fucking combo. God, I gotta practice that combo more. That's easy. Sometimes the problem is, well, fuck, like, I'm jumping at this Eno, and, like, she keeps slapping me out of the air. Fuck. Well, what am I gonna do instead of that? And you gotta analyze the situation from an entirely different perspective, right? You gotta then go, alright, well, I'm getting slapped out of the air. What can I do to not get slapped out of the air? Well, first off, I could just jump less, right? Approach on the ground instead. And then, like, or instead I could, like, vary my jump timing slightly, where I could, like, jump, then delay the dash really fucking long. Or I could jump, dash, then also use my overhead air move, because then my jump arc will become stranger still, thus making it harder for her to slap me out of the air, because I'm not approaching in such a binary way. Right? Like, sometimes you have to analyze things more granularly than that, where it's not just like, I fucking pushed the buttons wrong. I should push the buttons right next time. Sometimes it's more abstract. This Genji's fucking spanking me. God damn. Well, what can I do about this Genji spanking situation, right? Well, I'm playing Ana right now, so, like, what I could do is just, like, be really conservative with how I use my bio grenade. Because when Genji comes on me, don't take that one out of context, but when Genji comes on me, right? If I throw my grenade at my feet and then get myself and the Genji suddenly lost half his health and I recovered half my health. And then he's not gonna like that very much. He's gonna not want to be involved in that situation so much anymore. Way easier for me to fight him off. I could be really safe with how I use my sleep dart as well, but Genji's hard to hit, so that's kind of, who knows, that one might not work out so good for me, but it's something I can consider as well. Then it's like, oh, fuck, you know what I could do? I could play closer to health kits, because then that has a stacking effect with the bio grenade, right, where now I'm splash myself in the Genji, but if he keeps fighting, well, he can't steal the health kit from me because he's anti-healed right now. And if he keeps fighting me, I can just pick it up, right? Like, and then it'll, like, fully heal me regardless of what kind of health kit it is. Map dependent, you know. I can be where it's harder for Genji to approach me from. Genji, like, he's just kind of coming at me from this angle over and over again. Well, what if I just get where he can't, like, approach from that angle? Because now he has to go through, like, his whole my whole team to get to me, right? Or, like, you know what? Maybe I should just sit closer to my teammates, right? Like, maybe I'm too far back, so Genji's just preying on me because I'm isolated. If I'm not so isolated and I play closer to my team, they're more likely to help me, and Genji's also more likely to be afraid, right? Even if they don't help me, Genji's gonna look at that and be like, Anna's in the middle of 5 people right now. That's kind of scary. Which is kind of an underappreciated aspect of playing with your team, right? Where people are like, they don't help you anyway. Like, it's not necessarily about whether or not they help you. It can be about the flanker's gonna be more afraid to go into 6 people. Right? Like, if it's you by yourself, he's not really gonna be so afraid to go hard after you, right? Because you're by yourself. There's only so much can be done. If you're in the middle of 6 people, or 5 people, it's because you're not in the middle of yourself. If you're in the middle of 5 people, Genji looks at that and goes, they're really close together, though. It's really hard to get to the Ana right now. It's not always just about, like, my team won't help me. It can be about just dissuading the flanker. So you gotta think about things like this, right? You can't just go, oh, Jesus Christ, I keep letting Genji kill me. Well, why am I letting Genji kill me, right? Like, ask that follow-up question. Why is this happening? And then, what could I do to mitigate that situation as much as possible? And, you know, sometimes it is just click on them better, but then sometimes it can be more abstract than that. When you make the mistake, when the mistake occurs, acknowledge the mistake, sure. But then also do the extra follow-up work of and then thinking why the mistake happened and the steps you can take to prevent that mistake in the future. And that's like the best learning habit you can possibly have. Ask questions, essentially. There you go. So now, we gotta play against this fucking Zato, though, because I just started it, but now I've run out of things to say. So Zato, I still don't know how to play against Zato. It doesn't help that you don't really see many people playing Zato, at least right now. He seems like the kind of character that'll be more popular as people figure out what to do with him. Because he's kind of like having the Shadow, Eddie, is kind of like a real setup-based stuff, right? And, like, every Zato I've seen so far has done, like, different stuff as well. Like, they all have, like, different setups they do. So, as people figure Zato out a little bit more, I'll probably see him more frequently. It's just really hard to know when you can, like, push a button, basically. Like, when Eddie's coming at you doing the stabby on the ground, there's actually a break in there where you can push a fast button and, like, push Eddie off of you. Which is kind of the main deal, right? This is actually the first when he first did that, like, shark in the air move at me, where he, like, lunges forward, that one, I was like, Zato can do that? That was actually the first time I'd ever seen a Zato use that move, and I was like, what the fuck? Zato can do that? It's wild, like, the variance you see with people. I haven't even seen a Leo do this, but, like, myself, I was watching a video and I watched Leo do this like propeller move from like his jump, and then he like propellers down at you diagonally. I was like, Leo can do that? I've never seen a Leo use that move. Anyway, it's really early, it's a really young game, and then I was like, all right, if he's gonna do that, I'm just gonna fucking use my anti-air right at the start of the round and get him out of it. But yeah, Zato's real spooky because basically, it's real easy to get into a situation where you're like, how do I get out of this? How do I... so much shit's happening. Like, oh, God, look at all this shit that's on the screen right now. Oh, Jesus Christ. Oh, where even is his hitbox right now, you know? Like, this really overwhelming situation. That's like a counter move. When Eddie's coming at you with the wigglies, Eddie's gonna block you. You gotta, like, do something else. You can't jump, he's gonna slap you out of the air. You can throw Zato a lot of the time, because the Zato is usually trying to throw you. He's real spooky, real scary character to play against. Then I was like, he won't do the thing again since I just anti-aired him. Should have known better than that. But then you get the Zato in the corner. Zato don't know what to do when he's in the corner. Just like the chip situation from last game. Once you've got the Zato on the back foot, they don't know what to do. They only know what to do when they're playing offensive. Like, fucking grab him, he's gonna grab me. Fucking grab his ass first. Like, when you get these, like, really aggressive players in the corner, they don't know what to do. They start panicking. Then it's really easy. So the trick is you gotta not fall apart in that intervening area, right? Like, basically, I need to be playing neutral way more solidly so that Zato doesn't get me to the corner, because that's what Zato wants, right? Like, that's what Zato's good at. I need to be not letting him get to the... I can't let him get to his win condition, which is this. It's the same win condition as me. I don't want it. I don't want to be in this situation. He's doing the anti-air a lot, so that's why I'm just, like, jumping in the corner. So I'm trying to bait that, like, diagonal chompy move. But then, like, he kind of recovers from it pretty quickly as well, so I'm not actually punishing him for doing it. Hey, grab me, you know, life is hard. So I'm not actually, like, punishing from doing it, but, like, that's the thought process, is like, I jump, just, like, neutral jump, up, down. Then punish him when he does the anti-air and it doesn't hit me. This is a very good strategy against Nagoriyuki, the big samurai sword man that we've seen a couple times. He's not super popular. But his has so much recovery. He does this huge vertical swing that, like, he's recovering for, like, a solid second afterwards. Like, it's insane. Zato, not so much. A little harder to bait and then punish it. So coming at me with the wigglies, don't like that. Just slap him off. This is something I'm trying to do more often, is just, like, slap a fast button. Because people tend to be doing, like, it's fake shit, where there's, like, this big gap in it. The pressure only really works if the guy lets you keep doing it. And I have a problem where I play too defensively in these situations. So I'm trying to just, like, challenge them more by just, like, pushing a fast button to, like, get them out of this, like, fake pressure setups they're doing. Because I'm too defensive as a player in general. Like, if I'm playing a character with a reversal, I, like, never use the reversal because I'm too afraid of it getting punished and shit. Like, but that just then leads to people playing super aggressively because I'm not, like, doing the thing that counters this aggressive play. Because I'm too afraid of it backfiring. You can't be that way. You gotta do these things, you know? So I'm trying to get better at that right now. This is something I think that doing the other thing would help with, because if I'm playing a character that, like, Soul Bad Guy, who, to be fair, I have little interest in, I wouldn't do him very soon, but, like, you know, he's got, like, a really fucking good invincible reversal move that you can just, like, he recovers from it so quickly that people just frequently don't punish him for doing it. So, like, playing that would probably help me be more keen to do this kind of thing. That's something that can help you learn as well, is, like, playing other characters. It's easier to learn how to deal with something when you're trying to learn how to do that thing, right? Like, if I played Zato, I'd be more familiar with how, like, Zato's setups work. So I'd be more confident in how I could get out of those. Similarly, I play Ramlethal a lot. So when I'm playing against a Ramlethal, it's easier for me to get out of the situation because I know where, like, the gap is, right? That you can kind of try and snake out of. So playing other characters, like, it helps. It helps you with these games, with all games, basically. It just helps you broaden your understanding of the game, which is really important. No, I didn't have any meter. I was like, I could have probably killed him right there, but I actually didn't have any meter. If you ain't got 50% meter, you're not doing anything exciting in this video game. And then I just get jabbed. Life is hard. Life is hard. So, that was a very tragic experience playing against the Zato. He was really unlike any Zato I've seen previously. He was wild. Did learn a lot playing against him, though. So anyway, thank you very much for watching. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. I'm more than happy to answer. If you have a question you'd like answered on the show, please ask it in your preferred format. Comment on the video, email, whatever you want. ESP, smoke signals. I start streaming on Twitch Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 8 p.m. EST to 11 EST. There's a link down in the description. If you managed to make it all the way through the video and somehow still enjoyed it, please like the video and subscribe for more content of middling quality in the future. And I hope you found the video helpful.